And there's not a lot of spaces to like open up about that stuff. And so I feel like that. I've been talking to some people about that as well. And so one, like I wanted to create like a really safe space where like literally there's just like, let's just connect, like let's chill and like talk about that kind of stuff. Yeah. Whether it's like losses or frustrations or even like successes. And then like, I think it would just be a ton of fun to like learn new things about people that are doing different things, right? I think like no one's actually doing the actual same thing in the same place. Like that's what's cool too. So there's literally no like, man, like I'm against you. And that's what I like about sort of this, whether it's virtual or real life community, like that, like we're all here for each other. Like there's so many people in the world that I think that's pretty clear. Like everybody here is pretty for people.
It's because I think like where we're at in business, like personally, like I will not like, you know, I've been lazy, like, you know, straight up, I've been lazy. But I think for me, and like going back to that story, because I think that's like, that was really important for us. You know, I think in the month of like, what was it when we hit like quarantine, March, yeah. April, like we were 3 months in. And literally, I remember like everything was locked down. We were talking about this earlier today. You know, that was like either you, and this is our biggest fear. People are gonna say like, oh, like they played at the wanna start business type. You know, 3 months in, everything shuts down. Like,
you thought about that?
You thought about what? You thought about what?
Like the failure of like, oh, people are like, oh, see, like that's another business that someone started and they just kind of.
Oh, so like that was in the back of your mind.
You legit thought about that?
I mean, I did because this is what I'm thinking. I'm like, well, the guy that's making our content, the guy that I proposed to, like, hey, I have this business idea. Like, do you want to be a part of it?
Pablo.
Yeah. And so I'm like, well, he's not here, and he was like going through like a whole other thing in like his own life.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, what do I do? Like, so then that's when I was like, okay, I've made enough money to buy a camera. I bought a $800 camera, Facebook Market. I bought that thing and I just cracked Final Cut Pro. And I just, I didn't have the money to buy it.
Yeah, it was just not expensive.
And so then I'm like, okay, well, and then I was just kind of like, I knew that Pablo was like busy. So then I'm like, YouTube, myself. Like I just remember like being in California, like doing nothing and just trying to figure out what button means, you know. So then I think that was like a big shift for us. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I think we were so new to this whole world that we just weren't prepared for anything. So I just remember like, literally I remember showing up. One of the biggest things that we've always really set straight is like, we're always gonna do something, but we're gonna make it the best we can. Like, I don't like, whether 5 people show up, like I'm gonna make it the best I can. So I just remember Wayward, I was expecting 50 people. I said 50 people are gonna show up and it's gonna be a cute pop-up. That's what I said. I was like, you know, whatever, cool. Because it's also in like April or May, which is still, it was still
quarantine was still a little.
It was
fresh.
still going,
yeah.
And so they were cool about it. And I think that's where I was like, I took the surprise of like my life, you know, where like it's 30 minutes and there's a huge line.
I remember that.
Like I was over.
Why do you think?
Because I was like,
what do you think happened? Like,
I don't know. To this day, I'm still trying to figure it out.
I really relate to you, and you know that I do. Like, as a creative, like, even helping Johnny start this agency, the question is like, it's really like I love the conversation of the orchestrator and then the band player. Like, as much as I would love to like relate to the orchestrator, I much relate to like.
And both are great.
And absolutely, and I think it's also learning that, but like really, I feel like, how do you define that true north? You know, like, cause it's like, do I want, like I've been able to teach like Pablo, I've been able to teach in essence like Abigail, Jared, and Jackie, and like a couple of people like what I know, but then it's like, how are you the coach and the player at the same time? Mm-hmm. You know, do you understand that part? Because I feel like do you feel like that helps you define your true north, or are you? Do you know what I'm asking? Because it's not even a question. I think I'm just opening up for like my process is. Do I like stand back, or is like what you said, like is it a couple of months of just a bunch of awkward like conversations of like, look, that font doesn't look that good, but this is a lot better, or like what you made right now, like no, but later this, like it's because I love what you said. Your true north has nothing to do with clothing. That's what you're doing, right? And that it'll grow on later. But I think for like a deep creative, it's like what is the true north, like. For you know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that? I know I'm like just rambling, but it's something that I keep thinking. Like, true north. Like, am I trying to scale and like really do something, or am I like just gonna get deep into what I do? Because it's like for you, I think you're a drummer, or you're just gonna like, or are you gonna sell samples, or can you do both? Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say? So like,
I mean, I have a lot. Yeah, I mean, I think at some point we're forced to think about that, and just like it has, like we have to face that at some point, because I think all of us, like even as creative, I mean, if we were just strictly creatives, we just wanted to create, like we would just do it. We wouldn't care. It's not about the money. We don't want to make money, but like I think at the end of the day, all of us kind of want to make some sort of money from it. So
for sure,
there comes a point where we have to be like, okay, I just made this. Like, what am I gonna do with it? Like, is it just for me, just to wear, just to make my own beats, just to make my own graphics or whatever? So for me, I mean, like I have to face that, and I have to like, okay, strategize and sit like, okay, how do I, even something with like community, what you do with it, every single detail, like I think you cultivate community really well, because that's like true north, like it's about people, and I'm like, for me, like it does start with the clothes. Like I love clothing. I'm like, I want to become the best craftsman I can at this, whether it's just making this one jacket that's it forever, like let me perfect that. So I think it's like, even like I have a goal. I've had some goals where it is about like being local has been on the forefront of the brand since the beginning. I was like, I want to be local. I love the idea of like an indie artist, an indie rapper, where they like conquer their city first and grow out from there afterwards. And it's not about like, let me try to be global from the get. Let me try to be small. Yeah.
I love what you said, because what you're doing is you're inspiring.
that's really
you're inspiring.
You're giving someone really good.
And I think a lot of businesses nowadays aren't doing that. I think they're trying to inspire the 40-year-old guy. And the 40-year-old guy has been doing it for like 20 years already, but nobody's thinking about the 14-year-old kid who's playing on Photoshop. I think in my case, like everybody's trying to inspire like the already established engineer. I sell drum samples, and it's very musical, but everybody's trying to inspire the 40-year-old engineer who's been doing this and has played on all the records and has mixed a ton of stuff. But nobody's inspiring the kid in the little room who like barely has an interface to try to make it work.
Do you think about that person?
That's the only reason this is working.
Because you were there at one point.
I was there, and then I think,
It's really good.
man, I just love this conversation because it like those kids matter. Like they matter, and I think nobody's thinking about their future. And what you're doing is you're thinking about their future. And it's so cool because like you're building. I don't even know what you do. I'm like, I haven't even met you. But I think you're thinking about something.
Sebastian building.
I know. But I think what you're doing
Oscar was wearing his hat.
You were
the Martial
Arts Academy.
What the heck? That's so sick.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing, what you said, because what you're doing is you're creating something bigger than yourself. So like, where now a kid who's like 14, when he's 19, he's probably still going to be doing what you taught him, but at a greater scale. And it's probably going to be bigger than you. That's the goal. You're teaching him how to be bigger than yourself. And that's so sick. Like, in my sense, like I may not be reaching the producer who's mixing the big record, but I'm reaching the 14-year-old kid. But now I have like 2,000 14-year-old kids who are like inspired about a sound.
Love that.
And they're doing it, and they're posting videos, and they're like,
Here's right there, like it doesn't matter if you're doing like clothing, if you're doing like
music samples. I mean, really, if you're doing shoes, like what's super interesting, and right now even working with like the kick stuff, like what's super interesting is this is probably very true. Like if you reach the 14-year-olds, you'll win. But like what's so hard is that like from a business perspective, it's really difficult to like put your eggs all in one basket and put them only to the 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And say like that's all I'm gonna do, because like with an agency, and we can go back here, like
Yes.
I'm like I so understand what you're saying, and like because here's the thing, like let's take money aside and say like Sebastian, like if you could make samples and like help drummers from all age and sizes, like who would you pick? You probably always pick that 14 to like 18-year-old that like needs to be molded and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like that's it. But then I talked to like the businessman Sebastian, and like it gets a little hard because like the 14-year-old may not buy it. That's the truth.
But yeah, but I think they will.
I mean, for sure, I hope that
Even if they don't.